The distress beacon pierced through the void like a dying star's last scream. Jack Morrison sat in the cramped cockpit of his salvage vessel, the Rusty Nail, watching the signal pulse on his display with rhythmic desperation. 3 months of hauling scrap metal through the outer rim had left him weary, but curiosity, and the promise of salvage rights, pulled him toward the source. What he found defied every expectation. The planet below was a scorched wasteland, its surface cracked like dried earth. But circling above it were creatures that shouldn't exist outside of ancient Earth legends. Dragons. Not metaphorical ones, not alien beasts that resembled dragons, actual dragons. Scales that shimmered with metallic luster, wings that stretched wider than cargo haulers, and eyes that glowed with an intelligence that made Jack's spine tingle. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands circling in a massive formation around a dying ship. Jack's comm crackled to life. Human vessel. The voice was deep, resonant, carrying harmonics that suggested it came from a throat designed for something far more destructive than speech. "We detect your approach. We require assistance," Jack blinked. "Dragons asking for help? From a human? This is Jack Morrison of the Rusty Nail. What's your situation?" A pause. Then, "I am Drax, wing commander of the Scaleborn fleet. Our colony ship has suffered catastrophic engine failure. We have been stranded here for 17 cycles. Our young are dying. Our elders weaken. We have exhausted all options within our expertise." Jack brought his vessel closer, scanning the massive colony ship. It was a marvel of biomechanical engineering. Grown rather than built, its hull a fusion of organic material and crystalline technology. But its power core was failing, leaking radiation that even his basic sensors could detect from this distance. "Why call a human?" Jack asked, genuinely puzzled. "Your tech is centuries beyond ours." "That is precisely why," Drax replied. "Our civilization has evolved along paths of biological enhancement and energy manipulation. We have forgotten the crude mechanical principles that your species still employs. What we see as primitive, you see as fundamental. Our best engineers cannot understand what has failed because they have never needed to comprehend such rudimentary systems." Jack couldn't help but smile. He'd been called a lot of things in his years as a salvage operator. Foolish, reckless, greedy, but never fundamentally useful. "I'll need to dock and take a look. But I'm going to be honest, I'm a salvage tech, not a miracle worker." At this point, Drax said, and Jack could hear the exhaustion beneath the pride. "We will accept whatever you can provide." The interior of the colony ship was breathtaking. Organic corridors pulsed with bioluminescent light, and the air thrummed with a low frequency that Jack felt in his bones. Drax met him at the airlock, a creature of magnificent terror standing 3 times Jack's height, with scales that reflected the corridor's light in prismatic patterns. "The core is this way," Drax said, his massive form moving with surprising grace. They descended through levels of the ship, passing chambers where dragon young huddled together for warmth, their scales dull from malnutrition. Elders watched Jack with eyes that held millennia of wisdom and growing desperation. The weight of their situation pressed down on him like atmospheric pressure. The engine core was a marvel, a sphere of contained plasma, sustained by electromagnetic fields generated through biological conductors. But the fields were collapsing and the plasma was destabilizing. Jack spent an hour studying the systems, cross-referencing with his tablet's database. The dragons watched him work, their silence heavy with hope and skepticism. Finally, he found it. There. Jack pointed at a junction where organic conduits met crystalline amplifiers. "You've got a feedback loop. The biological components are trying to heal themselves, but they're overloading the crystalline structure. Every time they regenerate, they create a surge that damages the crystals further. It's a death spiral." Drax leaned closer, his massive head tilting. "We attempted to accelerate the healing process. It only worsened the situation." "Because you were treating it like a biological problem," Jack explained. "But it's a mechanical one. You need to interrupt the loop. Create a buffer." "We have no materials that could—" "I do." Jack pulled out a standard electromagnetic dampener from his toolkit, the kind used to prevent feedback in salvage operations. "It's crude, inelegant, and probably offensive to your engineering sensibilities. But it'll work." The installation took 6 hours. Jack worked alongside Dragon engineers who watched with fascination as he employed techniques they considered barbaric: welding, manual calibration, physical circuit breakers. He bypassed sophisticated bio-neural pathways with simple copper wire. He stabilized quantum fluctuations with basic capacitors. When he finally activated the system, the core hummed to life with renewed vigor. The ship's lights brightened. The hum of power echoed through the corridors. And from throughout the vessel came a sound Jack had never heard before, the collective roar of thousands of dragons expressing joy. Drax found Jack in his ship, preparing to depart. The dragon commander carried a crystalline data core in his massive claws. This contained star charts to systems rich with salvage, Drax said, placing it carefully in Jack's hands. More wealth than you could accumulate in 10 lifetimes. It is insufficient payment for what you have done, but it is what we can offer. Jack looked at the core, then at Drax. Can I ask you something? You're an advanced species. You've mastered biological engineering, energy manipulation, faster than light travel. How did you forget the basics? Drax's eyes glowed with something that might have been amusement. We did not forget, human. We simply believed we had evolved beyond their necessity. Today you have taught us that sophistication and complexity are not always superior to simplicity and understanding. Perhaps that is humanity's greatest strength. You still remember how to solve problems with your hands and your ingenuity, not merely with power and technology. Jack smiled. We're still figuring things out, I guess. Can't afford to forget the basics when we're barely scratching the surface. Then never stop scratching, Drax said. The galaxy needs those who remember that sometimes the simplest solution is the right one. As Jack's ship pulled away from the colony vessel, he watched the dragons form an honor formation, wings spread wide in salute. A herd of dragons saved by human ingenuity and stubborn practicality. The galaxy, Jack thought, was full of surprises, and humanity's greatest contribution might just be remembering what others had forgotten. That every problem, no matter how complex, came down to understanding the fundamentals. He set course for the next salvage site, whistling an old Earth tune, the crystalline data core secure in his cargo hold, a reminder that sometimes being primitive was exactly what the universe needed.